I've read Marx. I've read Engels. I've read Das Kapital.
The world is run by Trotskyists.
Hardcore Trotskyites.
How great an anti-American Marxist.
They're controlled by Trotskyists, as you put it, and these are the most evil, sick human beings on the face of the planet.
You're listening to the Left Opposition Podcast with myself, Aaron, and we've got tonight on the program, we've got Chris, Ben, and Joe. Hope you guys are doing okay.
Woo! Hey.
On the program tonight, we're talking about the back to work legislation on the Canadian postal workers. We're going to get into Chris and his update with build a fighting NALC.
You got it. All right. Nice going. That is a tongue twister. I'm not saying it ain't. All right. Yep.
And we're going to talk about the Amazon strike and the Starbucks barista workers strike. This has been we're ending off 2024 with a bang, ending it off with class struggle across the board. Solidarity to all workers who hit the picket lines, and especially to you, Chris. I think our audience would appreciate listening to, a Marxist who is a worker on the ground. A union worker who is a Marxist.
I am that.
That's kind of how I pitch our show to a lot of to some folks. I'm like, yeah, we're workers who have a podcast, and we also dabble in Marxist theory, right?
Fuck, we are. Yeah.
We're actually on the streets. We're talking to people.
We're not professional streamers, unfortunately. I know Haas has a lot of working class experience,
and that'll be our last discussion towards the end there is the class nature of the Starbucks proletariat, the Starbucks barista workers.
Is Hans Al-Adid going to be coming in to debate this?
Oh my God. If we can get him, that'd be so funny.
Oh God, Jesus. All right. I'll try to reach him out on this show. All right.
Yeah. So barista workers, petty bourgeois parasites or proletarian heroes, you decide.
The first one. I'm with Haas.
So to open our segment, after 5 weeks of striking for a better pay, pension protection, and better conditions for newer hires, the Trudeau government, Governor Trudeau, as Trump calls him, refused to wait any longer and they ordered the striking Canadian Union of Postal Workers, CUPW, I'll call it, through back to work through legislation, repeating what they did in 2018 to the postal workers, and again recently with the dock workers in Montreal. The Liberal Trudeau government, propped up in a coalition by the NDP, our supposed Labour Party, our representatives in Parliament. This has been characterized by strike breaking throughout its rule, and especially on the eve of a likely election going into 2025, and with Christmas fast approaching. The WestJet airline mechanics, the rail workers at CPKC and CN, the Montreal dock workers, they were all forced back to work as well. So rather than meeting the demands of the workers, the bosses waited them out, living off of the vast wealth accumulated on the backs of the postal workers. And it was a valiant effort and a polarizing campaign with Canadians divided on supporting or opposing the striking workers. What remains to be seen is if the postal workers will defy the back to work legislation through rank and file organizing, since they can't seem to depend on their union leadership, who immediately caved to the orders to get back to work. Yeah. And so we're going to discuss a couple of articles. One is from Marxist Workers Group, and the other one is from the RCI. So letter carrier spoke to one of our comrades over at MWG to give his thoughts. The news was a huge blow to morale, and honestly was a missed opportunity. They were ordered back to work for the next several months, but then they're put into a strike position in May of 2025. The union exec is fighting this out in the courts, but these things take months. They never change anything, and the courts never get us anywhere. So lots of rank and file workers were enthusiastic about defying back to work orders. This was the impression I got too when I visited my local picket line. People were sick and tired of back to work legislation, but unfortunately it doesn't get widespread without leadership backing it. Over the last several weeks, the fight escalated beyond maintaining pickets. They brought the lines to Chrystia Freeland's office and other MPs' offices. There is a will to continue, and a need to escalate further. Defying back to work would have been that. But at the end of the day, the workers were exhausted. Let's face it.
Yeah.
The rally outside Chrystia Freeland's office, they had a really good turnout. Lots of other unions showed up to show support, and even conversations were being held about a general strike, but hesitation among the leadership put a damper on those thoughts. A processing plant in BC stayed out several hours past the deadline thanks to support from other unions and the community. It was ultimately dispersed by cops. So when asked what the broader labor movement could be doing to defend our rights and stop the government from enacting back to work legislation, the worker responded that the legal framework around unionization was already designed to be unfavorable to labor. It was designed by the capitalists who own our legislatures, but ultimately this might bite them in the ass if they keep undermining their own legislation. People ordered back to work now decide if they defy or comply. And if you strike illegally, that's something you can do anytime without permission or approval. The more they go against their own process, the more they discredit themselves. So some workers are naturally hesitant about defying. Some are worried about workplace repercussions, legal repercussions, and others are just generally pessimistic about the state of the labor movement. But what's needed to be understood is the strike did have broad union support, which makes a substantial victory even more possible. Success breeds success. And just 2 years ago, Ontario saw a wildcat strike by public education workers, which forced the Ford government to walk back their legislation and force them to come back to the table. The government also recently appointed a commission to look into the issues that prevented the union and employer from reaching negotiated agreements, recommendations on how to amend the collective agreements, other changes, structures, rights, responsibilities, etc. This might be code. It's potentially opening the door for privatization. And that's something we need to be ever vigilant about. Privatization never leads to good outcomes. And it is something we need to organize on a massive scale to fight back against. So as with most failed movements, it boils down to a crisis of leadership. The union's leadership did not organize the mood and willingness of the workers, but rather they did everything in their power to stifle it. Workers, after the legislation was passed, workers did get a 5% wage increase in exchange for returning back to work. This is in light of years of stagnant wages during COVID, because they felt they had to do their part during the early days of the pandemic as online shopping and
I can relate to that.
Ramped up. Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
There was a sense of duty, and that's something that really needs to be capitalized on by union leadership. So one example of the failure of leadership comes out of Vancouver. Longshoremen were they marched in solidarity with the postal workers, but the Postal Union National Executive, through the Canadian Labour Congress, petitioned to have their workers stop the solidarity striking. The executive went out of their way to smother opposition to their capitulation to the bosses. The national exec did not consult the workers if they wanted to go back to work, and no vote was taken. So there's workers on the ground right now that are like, they should all resign because they're going to put us through this bullshit again in May. The breaking of the strike represents a massive missed opportunity to stop the trend of back to work legislation. CUPW was born out of an illegal wildcat strike, and they should dig deep into their roots to find that militant leadership once more. The entire delivery and logistics industry needs to be unionized, expropriated, and run according to the needs of people rather than for profit for greedy, parasitic bosses. In the meantime, we have 5 months to prepare for the next possible strike. Workers can begin to organize by reading testimonies from their comrades in various Marxist publications. We'll link to those in the show notes. Rank and file committees aren't a bad idea either. Also, cannot recommend this enough, and we recommend this every episode. Read Teamster Rebellion. I read it after a postie on the ground recommended it to me, and it might be the greatest book ever written. So that's all I have for now on this front, but we will talk about more on the Teamsters. So now we move on over to Chris for an update on the campaign to vote no in the NALC. Take it away, Chris.
Thank you. Aaron, let me just, before we start here, I want to apologize that I have failed you. And Ben, you know where I'm going with this because you mentioned Teamster Rebellion. Teamster Rebellion is the greatest book ever written.
Yes, it is.
Correct. It is. And the fact that my love of that book, the way I would talk about, Ben, you were around about a year ago or 2 years. The pandemic was 4 years ago. Ben was in the group with me. All I would do was talk about how great Teamster Rebellion is. We've read Teamster Rebellion. I would talk about Teamster Rebellion. I would cite Teamster Rebellion. Farrell Dobbs is my hero. And the fact that it took some other person to tell you, Aaron, about how great this book is, I have failed you. I have failed the podcast. I have failed the labor movement. And I owe everyone here an apology. So from the bottom of my heart, Chris McItaly, apologies to the listener that you have not read Teamster Rebellion. You should do right now. Pause the podcast right now. Go and buy the book. Don't listen to any podcast until it shows up. Read the entire book. Send me an email at the leftoppositionpodcast@gmail.com. And you two and I can have a nice chat about how great this book is. So there we go. So Aaron, I really wanted to apologize to you right off the jump because I owe everyone an apology here. It's okay. Don't worry about it. Also,
you have nothing to apologize for, comrade.
Okay, that's good. The other thing too is that you brought up too about how like they want the executive board to resign and everything, and it sounds like the same problem is going to happen here too. And a book I really like, it was written by the Chicago Teachers Union leadership called "How to Jumpstart Your Union." They also had sellout leaders like these people. And I know it sounds liberal, but I do mean this. Not bourgeois government elections, but union elections, right? Our last union election, not 88% of the people in my union didn't bother casting a vote for our current leader. They didn't. No one voted for that, right?
Wow.
A lot of these union elections, most people don't bother voting. Rank and file people, it's time to get involved in your leadership. Run for the offices. Like I said, a lot of there's like the doors open. A lot of people are retiring. Younger people aren't getting involved. The door is wide open for you. If you've read Teamster Rebellion, that's your fuel. I've already told you the cheat code. Read Teamster Rebellion. Now you got a full tank of NOS, and you're not gas, but NOS. And then once you get in there, you got to, like I said, the door's open. A lot of good leaders will see someone who wants to get involved and do something. At one point, a lot of these union bureaucrats were probably like you. There are some people who are just my daddy was a bureaucrat. I get a bureaucrat job. You do have some nepotism, and they don't give a shit. They just want a nice 6-figure job doing minimal work and shaking hands with bureaucrats. But how to jumpstart your union? I know you wanted to resign. You got to vote them out. This is the time, and you got, like I said, it might be a year or two. Read your union bylaws. Know when the elections are. Find like-minded people. Talk about working together. Run to people. Read how to jumpstart your union right after team. That gives you the history. This gives you a good plan, because the teachers union, the Chicago Teachers Union, they had the same thing. They started at the grassroots level. They made ties with parents. They went with people who wanted to be in. A lot of old guard people. They had to get rid of the old guard. A lot of old guard people who were like, everything's fine. 1% raise is good enough, or we're going to get back to work. Vote them out. So that's my advice. So like I said, I know knowing when to retreat's important. You may not win this one. I think we're reading Lenin's left-wing communism, which is a great thing. And Lenin writes this thing, like, you have to know when to retreat. You might lose this battle, but the war's not over. So like I said, you know all the assholes' names. Now you know how to vote them out and get people like you involved to run for office, So, all right, there you go.
A question for you then, Chris. I'm kind of neutral on them. I don't know enough about it, but what do you think about rank and file committees? Because you're advocating for using the internal structures that are already in place. Rank and file committees, it seems like a way to build like a dual power system inside the union.
That's
so,
okay.
Can you comment on that a bit?
Sure. Yeah. So those are good, right? You can do now. There's two options. One where I'd say, like, you want to try going through the current system as it is, right? Because usually it's not too hard. It's not like, say, you're going to run for president that you need like 1 billion signatures or what. It's very hard to do it. But you could really run for your local. You need just someone to make a second. Get in there, and you have to organize, because some people like, well, they never vote for me. Well, you have to get out there and organize. You got, like, what a lot of us are doing right now. We're going out every on Amazon Sunday. That's when all the new irregular, they're called city carrier assistants, but they're irregular substitutes. That's who they are. I was one of them for 3.5 years. It's a shit existence. We go out every Sunday. Well, once Christmas is over, so we're going to go back out there. Every Sunday, a group of 4 of us will go out and talk to maybe 20 of them. And that's how you get to build a relationship. You get to tell them their rights. We tell them when the union meetings are. Some people don't have a clue of how to vote. Like, they know nothing. They don't know that a boss, they're not on call. Like, they have rights on the job, and we're the ones doing it. And like, by the way, who are you? Oh, I'm Chris. I'm with the Build a Fighting NELC. Here we are. Nice. That's how you build those. That's going to take time. It's not gonna, if you think there's going to be an overnight win, it's not going to happen that way, my friend. You got to put that time and effort in. And you got to start at the grassroots level of talking to every worker one-on-one. You can do that, right? And that's how you do it. But the rank and file method, I know that's a great system too, because sometimes you might have the trade unions. Like, my union's a bit different, but some unions, they can blacklist you and kick you out. But you can do grassroots, like organizing. Like, our reform group is kind of a rank and file membership. We organized our own rallies. The bureaucracy had nothing to do with it. We did it. That's the rank and file stuff we're doing. Our reform group is rank and file. There's no paid bureaucrat. No one's getting paid to do this. We're all volunteers. It's a bit harder to do, because if you're working 40, 50 hours, 60 hours a week, it's kind of hard to organize. That's why we take turns doing it. But, we all organize together, and we do a lot of the education stuff, knowing your contract. We're doing that. So that's the rank and file. So that's kind of your reform group would be that from within. Like I said, no one gets paid. I'd like to get paid. That'd be cool. But, it's a volunteer thing, and we kind of educate each other. We have a WhatsApp group. We keep in contact. We have a big group chat that way, and we organize stuff. And we're having our meeting on Sunday. So yeah, so that's it. So the rank and file group can be within the union itself, if I did answer that in any way, shape, or form correctly.
Okay, so why don't you go through with what's going on then with the NALC and the and where we stand on that.
So the post office was partially privatized, right?
I'm glad you asked. How awesome of a question. So in 1970, up until 1970, it was a fully government operation. It was the United States Postal Department back then. Started in 1775. It actually predates the Constitution by Benjamin Franklin. So it was, if letter carriers wanted to get a raise or any kind of benefit increase, it would literally take an act of Congress to do it. They couldn't. There was no collective bargaining arrangement. It was called collective begging, where you had to ask senators and politicians to do it. So up until 1970. You have the department. So what happens is Congress votes to give itself like a 32% raise. Meanwhile, letter carriers hadn't received any raise in like 4 years by this point. And that was the breaking point. Plus, at the same point, too, it is 1970. The civil rights movement had happened. A lot of demonstrations had happened. So it didn't happen in a vacuum. There were other events. A labor militancy was still going, and it was a rank and file letter carrier by name of Vincent Sobrato in New York, who finally at a union meeting, when everyone was pissed off, he said, I vote that we authorize a strike fund. And then the strike fund passed overwhelmingly in New York City, I think in Bronx. And eventually they waited a few more days, and he goes, all right, I'm calling for a strike vote. And once the strike vote happened, they went on strike. Then it was like a cascading effect. All of New York, Boston, Pittsburgh, Washington, D.C., Chicago, all of the cities started going on. And this is there's no social media back then. It was all like radios and telephones and news and letters and stuff. The only place, unfortunately, of course, that didn't go on strike was the South. Alabama, Mississippi, the deep anti-union, very segregated South did not go on strike, really. None of the cities in the South, but everywhere else in the country did. Richard Nixon votes to call in the National Guard to break the strike. So the thing is, back at the time in 1970, a lot of letter carriers were veterans, so they knew most of the, and there was a lot of camaraderie, and the National Guard didn't really give a shit. They were like, yeah, these guys are, and some of them knew the people and stuff, so they were fraternizing. Some of the letter carriers, there's a video clip of 1970 with like Walter Cronkite, and they're showing it. And they go up to a soldier who's in full uniform, and he's looking at like a sorting table, and he goes, "Do you know what are you doing right now?" And the soldier just goes, "I don't have a clue of what I'm doing right now." So they couldn't operate the machines or know how to case mail, or like they didn't know anything. So after 6 days, they win the strike. So what changed? And I'm getting to your privatization, the whole quasi thing. So this has already been talked about. So it's kind of a quasi public. So the Postal Department goes away. The United States Postal Service is created. That's the USP as we have now, where I'm considered a federal employee, but we're self-funded. Ever since the 80s, we've been a self-funding, because during the government shutdowns, we're not affected by that. We fund ourselves. We also won collective bargaining rights, which is a huge deal. So now that's why we're going through a contract phase right now. But the ban on striking, which has been around since Teddy Roosevelt, who can go fuck himself, is that ban still stayed. So what happened was Congress made an offering of like, okay, what we're going to do is say this. You still can't go on strike, but to avoid a strike, we're going to have this interest arbitration where there's going to be a law, and the law says that all of you letter carriers will make roughly the equivalent of a private sector workforce. That's the law. So we're going to try to get you guys that. Okay, that's fine. So right now, if we vote, right now we're voting in right now. This contract expired over 500 days ago. So we have a tentative agreement. I would be surprised if this passed. I don't think it's going to. I think it's going to get voted down by a pretty large margin. If that happens, they go back to the bargaining table, and then our idiot, his name is Brian Renfro, who's a moron and a complete sellout. Yeah, he sucks. He cares more about the post office than the people who he's supposed to represent, which is us. So they go back with the USPS DeJoy's negotiator, a guy named Tolino, who makes over $600,000 a year. So those two guys will sit there, and they have 15 days to come up with another agreement. We get to vote on it again. And if we vote no the second time, which they'll happen, then it goes to federal interest arbitration, where they would have to basically look at what UPS makes. And just for comparison, for me, I have to work 17 years to get the top wage of $37 an hour. A UPS driver right now on his first day will make $35 an hour. That's the start. So that would greatly, so we're hoping now, it's not that obviously we'd like to strike instead or have the threat of a strike, but interest arbitration is a safer way to go. It doesn't ruffle any feathers. And our case is so strong, that's the thing. Like I said, it's, we have to build up because our leadership is weak. Our weak leadership wouldn't do it, even though, like in 1970, I was a rank and file member that started the strike movement. If this was the George Floyd summer, maybe there'd be some more gut, and just as much as I'd like to say we'd love to go on strike, hypothetically speaking, of course, I'm just saying this is a concept, legally speaking. As a concept, I think a strike would be better, but I'm not calling for one, legally speaking. But, this would be a good win. And then in 2026, President Renfro will be voted out of office. I'm almost certain. If this gets voted down and we go to arbitration, that's the end of his career. He's done. So a lot of us in my organization, we're called Build a Fighting NALC. We are very confident that if we reject this and win the good arbitration case, his career is over. He purposely negotiated this all by himself. This is the end of his career. So we're banking on that. There's 2 candidates who are running for office. There's one guy Mike Cariff. I just met him last week. He's an awesome guy. He's out of Chicago, but there's a good current coming along. So right now, the membership is voting as we speak. We have ballots went out, I believe, about 2 weeks ago. They'll be counted on January 13th. That's the deadline. The results are being counted because a lot of my fellow letter carriers are going to be nervous, who's counting it? There is a neutral third party that does do it. They do a good job. There's also, our union has election observers, and talking to the 2 opposition candidates and Renfro, they're all, and I literally just talked to him in person. He's like, I like these people. It's some of their people, it's some of our people. We think this is neutral. We can, so it's above board. Even the opposition is fine with it. Everyone agrees the vote counters are legit. So that's good. So we'll have that. So if it gets voted down, we plan on having rallies on Martin Luther King Day. It's a federal holiday. We will all have the day off. That's why we're going to do it. We did it on Indigenous Peoples Day in Boston. That was a nationwide thing. I believe 30 cities have actually gone out and did it on that same day. And this is organized by the rank and file. Our national leadership does not want any media attention. Our national leadership does not want people in the streets. Rallies are discouraged. Be quiet. Don't ask any questions, because we try to fight for opening bargain in a national convention, where all we were saying was, please give us an update of what's going on. You've been negotiating for 500 days. There've been no updates at all. So we want parts of it, and but there's still a lot of anger about the contract. So now that we think we can organize a much bigger, more effective rally, because public pressure does matter as much as some of the people who think we should stay in the shadows and don't say anything. We'll be quiet. Congress might get involved if they hear us saying. People could hear how much we're asking for. They could get really mad. We have literally leaders in higher up in our union who are saying if people knew what we were asking for, they would privatize us in a second. We have cowardice. There's a difference between fear and cowardice.
Yeah.
You can deal with fear. When I was a roofer, I'd worked on, I got a job as the recession, and I'd worked on a 12-foot roof, and I thought I could do roofing. My first job on day one was a 64-foot roof. I was fearful. I was terrified to go up there, but I had a good crew. They told me how to go up and down the ladder. Don't look down, do this 3-point. And they showed me, and I can overcome fear. You can overcome fear. Cowardice, you can't change. And that's why our leadership is full of a bunch of cowards who just are so fearful. They never fought. The people who went out on the 1970 strike, that was 50 years ago. All those great leaders are gone. They've died. A lot of them passed away. Like I said, it was 50 years ago. A new generation of people who've had shit wages like us, we're ready. Like I said, the George Floyd protests, I think, got a lot of leadership. The Occupy movement, a lot of people have experience. We see the success of the longshoreman strike. We see the success of the Teamsters, of the UAW, of SAG-AFTRA. We're seeing all these big double-digit gains, and we were offered a 3.9% raise over 3 years. The Teamsters the longshoreman got 62%. We're getting 1 point something raises if we don't fight this shit. So I do feel quite confident that this is something good's going to happen out of this. The movement is growing. And the fear of privatization, which is a normal one, I'm not too afraid of it. And I hope I don't eat those words. But I just think that only because the public loves us, you have a lot of Republicans who support us because, number one, we employ a lot of veterans. That matters. A lot of these places, the post office is the only steady job around. They need these jobs. lots of facilities. Things rely on the post office. So even unlike Rand Paul can get fucked. That guy, if you see his testimony, basically he wants Uber drivers delivering your mail. He said that we make too much money and we have too many benefits. The starting wage for a letter carrier is $19.33 an hour, and he thinks that's too much money. So
yeah, no, his problem is that there's no fucking CEO making like 10 billion a year.
Right, exactly. And we can't privatize it all off. And the fact that we should be making about $4 an hour, and that would be it. And and if we get hit, if we're running really fast, you trip and you fall and you get hurt and you have to go to work for 3 weeks, there's no workers' comp. That's not happening. Or you get fired, no unemployment, no union rights. Like this is what the Republicans want. Us all fist fighting for sub minimum wage jobs. And Rand Paul was at least the only honest pro-capitalist politician there. But
he's a libertarian.
I know, small government.
Yeah, it's it seems to me though, like if they're gonna privatize it, then you just turn around and say, okay, then we're going on strike.
Right.
Like, you mean we can strike now? Cool.
They would. Now, the thing is, what I'm pretty sure they would do, because the Royal Mail was privatized, like they would probably work in a way where it would still be banned, because like we're in the Constitution. Like that's the only branch of and it is actually in the is the Postal Service. Like it's Article whatever the hell it is. But that's the thing. Like, we have such, like I said, all we need is a few changes, but they would gut our collective bargaining rights. That's what would happen. Those would be gone, and getting your rights back would be very hard to get. They would try to change the rules, but I know, because some people are saying, oh, we can go on strike, but it's like, I don't, privatization can go 300 different ways. It's not all it's not going to be wholesale. The mail is unprofitable. Like they'll have us keep delivering the mail, but they'll sell, like I said, they'll sell off. You'll get mail 3 days a week. And then you'll get packages, and that'll be done by a third party, like an Uber driver will be coming around delivering your packages for you.
Or they'll bring in migrant workers or something to finish it off,
Yeah.
Right.
Can't wait to pay $13 to get my mail.
and also get ready for massive price hikes would go up too, because we have, and plus also the post office does a lot of unprofitable things, because we have something called the universal delivery. If you have an address, we have to deliver there, right? Amazon and UPS and FedEx, they will not go in the middle of nowhere like Iowa to deliver. They don't do, it's not worth it. It's too expensive they lose money if they go there. We have to make the delivery attempt. It's called the last mile. We have to go and deliver to rural areas where there's no service. And that's about 35% of the post office. We take up the slack of it, because you think Amazon wants to go on they have to, say there's an island in the middle of a river. You can see river boats go out there. It's a postal riverboat. We have to go out there and make those delivery attempts. You think Jeff Bezos wants to pay someone to deliver some lipstick to somebody? No, they get us to do it. We're the ones that are going to drop that shit off. So that's the part of it too. There's a lot more to it. And plus, most of the people at the post office, if you look at if you go to the website, all but one of the leaders of the post office work their way up from the bottom, right? All the rest are lobbyists for shipping firms. All of them. They want the price of packages to stay low so they can subsidize their industries. That's what they're looking for. So all that I have to do, really, we deliver about, I think, 2.5 million packages a day. Right? We have this big deficit coming up. We could raise it by pennies per package, and we would be out of the hole. We could bring back postal banking. Bernie Sanders is a big advocate on that. That has been estimated that could raise $9 billion a year. But the problem is it would fuck with big banks, and big banks don't want to get fucked with, because those rural areas and urban areas where there's no banking industries, or you want to do cash checking, if you go in the inner city, it's like $20 a check. They gouge you for it. The post office would offer very cheap services. It would serve the public. It would be a great benefit to the public. The post office wins, but guess who loses? Bank of America, Deutsche Bank, and all the big banks and TD. They don't want, so that's why they're going to fight against it all, tooth and nail. So that's the whole thing. These are some very small changes that could be made. We could be in the black and we'd be fine. And we could actually fund my fucking raise too, because no one's coming to work here. We have people who are sleeping. We have letter carriers sleeping in their cars, right now. We have people who, like, we have a thing called the Thrift Savings Plan. It's a retirement fund, which Rand Paul wants to gut. And Trump tried to privatize in 2018. But you get a 5% match. You put your money, you get a 5%. And that's what funds your retirement. Because after your body gives out, like, this is a physical job. After you're going to get knee replacement surgery or your body gets worn out. You can't work till you're 80 delivering mail. Your body's going to wear down. But this is a retirement fund. We have letter carriers, new guys who they can't save for their retirement at all.
Yeah.
It's the conditions here. Like, everyone thinks that, like, and also way back to it, like in the 80s and stuff, used to, like, case mail, which is like you're indoors, case in the mail. Then you're doing 4 hours of delivery. Since we have a lot of automation, it's now about 2 hours in the office, 6 hours delivering. So your body, like I said, you're wearing out more. Your days are longer. That happens too. And now, because no one wants to work at this job for $19.33 an hour, like, you can get more money working at Stop and Shop or like fast food, making more. And nothing against they deserve more than that. We both do. But if someone's like, I can go work at Subway, I saw the ad for $20 an hour, or I can work, 55 hours a week, 6 or 7 days a week at the post office. What am I going to do? I'm going to work at Subway. I'm going to work indoors. It's like, it was 12 degrees this morning. Do you think, for $19.33 an hour? Oh, that sounds like worth it. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons they do this shit. Like, that's why they fuck with the operation, the way the post office operates is so that it becomes like this. Yeah. And then it's no longer like, oh, it's so great to have like a government job with a pension. Mm-hmm. Now people will say, oh no, that sucks. Actually, we should privatize things.
Right, exactly. Because, well, see, it's not running well. See, oh, look at all this. And it's like, well, yeah, because, like, you rigged the deck of cards against us. And then it's like, well, see, I think it was that Noam Chomsky quote, like, defund a government agency, make it run poorly, privatize it. Like, that's kind of the whole thing of it. Turn it over to private capital. It's a good point. Pretty much. That's what they want. Right. So that's where we're at. And I could go on for another 2 hours about this, but it's this could be a 5-part series of me. But the good thing is, I will just say this. So my group, Build a Fighting NELC, at first, it was our first Zoom meetings. We had maybe, I remember, like 25, 30 people. Then it went to 50. Then it went to 100. Our last Zoom meeting we had 550 people.
No kidding. That's awesome.
Yeah.
We're getting, because word's catching on. And I'll say this to anyone who's organizing, and not just in the post office, but anywhere you do it, right? Courage is contagious. It really is. If people hear that you're pissed off and you're actually doing, because everyone complains. Like, I know everyone complains when the pay sucks here. But if you're actually doing something and you can tell people, like, I'm trying to do this, you should vote no on this contract. We got some candidates, we're talking, and mostly we're talking to the new people that no one talk. Like, a lot of the older generation, unfortunately, they made a 2-tier system here, and unfortunately, that's where management played as well. It used to be all letter carriers were all basically the same in the 1970s and 80s. They all made around this. The difference was about $4,000. That was the difference. The difference now between top and bottom wage right now is around $29,000. There's a huge difference in pay. And there's a lot of animosity because the older people, like, well, you guys are just lazy. I used to work hard too. And it's like, dude, no, you didn't. You guys started off making a great, and I showed it for inflation. You guys, like, the carriers were making more in 2012 than they are now. It's ridiculously bad here, but my org, like I said, we got some demands. Our demands are $30 an hour starting wage, make it a 6-year to top wage, not 17. The right to strike, union officers to make the same wages as us. And there's a 5th one. I don't remember. Maybe that's 4. But those are it. But, like, you tell someone making $19.30 an hour that we want $30 an hour, all the new people are getting on board. Those, like I said, a lot of the older carriers, they're just waiting to retire. Some care. There are some really great there's some really great people who actually care about passing on, like, there's a belief that you should make the union better than when you found it. And a lot of the older members, and I can name 20. They're great. There's some really solid people, but, like, I swear to God, my office just has, like, all of them were like, fuck, I'm retiring in 2 years. Good luck. That's it. But we are definitely seeing a lot of newer members. So things are looking promising. Things are bad now. I get it. A lot of people are feeling hopeless. A lot of people saying, I'm leaving the union, and I get it. Because I need that. You didn't negotiate a living wage for me. I have to buy groceries for my family, and I understand. I get it. I really do. But all those people, I tell them, like, look, we need you to stay and fight. don't please stay with us.
Right.
It's gonna,
the
right.
union exists for moments like this.
Right. And like I said, it's not going to get better anytime soon. It's going to take some time, but I promise you, we're like, when someone gets in trouble, a union letter, someone from the union is going to help stand up for you. We're working on it. So stick with it, stay with the movement, like I said, give us 2 years. 2 years, and we got a group of hell raisers who are gonna kick some ass on day one. So anyway, all right. I know I said I'd stop, but this is what I've been by the way, this is what I've been doing for the last 5 months. So if you've been noticing why we've been doing it bi-weekly, Chris has been like talking in freezing cold weather to people all over the state about it. And like I said, we're growing and it's going great. But really, so I apologize for my not every other week thing here, but we're doing good. So anyway.
Well, it's good stuff, and also it's illustrative, right? It's illustrative of what privatization looks like, going from a universal service that the government provided, and now, with all this shit, like, I don't know, like they're gonna turn into like a thing where you need to like have a subscription for your mail. I mean, it's just insane.
Probably. Yeah. They could have their way, they would too.
Yeah.
And up the price by 50%.
That shit is so insidious. The subscription model taking over everything. Like, and I've had conversations with people where it's like they don't fucking remember that it didn't used to be this way like 10 years ago.
Right. Like, remember like how like if you got like, not that we owned like a brand new BMW or anything, but like there was a thing for a BMW. If you wanted your heated seats, that's a $10 a month subscription to heat the seats in your fucking car. Like when I used to buy the car, I'd own everything in the car. But like the fact they can turn off things that like this is, yeah, you're right, but the subscription model, everything, because there's no profit to be made by making one product. No, God. If they could charge like a user fee on records I have from the 60s I listened to try to get that back. But like, oh my God.
Yeah, it's like with video games now. It's like they put out like the first fucking version of the game and
the shit
sucks.
version.
Yeah, the version that they like fucking chained a bunch of programmers to their desks for like 3 months straight to like finish this fucking game. And then it's a piece of shit. And then it's like, oh, but we're doing a patch and we're doing DLCs and we're doing all that, and then you got to pay monthly
that
for
needs
your
to unionize.
Big time.
Yep.
Anyway, there's like people getting trapped in their Tesla Cybertrucks because like it crashed during
and
a
they
software
burned to
update.
death. Yeah.
And they burned to death, or it just crashes during a software update, and like I can't get out of my car.
Yeah.
You know what doesn't need software updates is my 2012 Dodge Ram.
There you go.
Yeah.
No shit. I know.
And Teslas do a lot of that. Like they have like the computer inside of it will like lock you out of certain premium features until you upgrade it.
It's so psychotic.
It is.
It's
That's insane.
It's the fact that those are street legal is like
no shit.
Just proof positive that we don't have a fucking country anymore.
No. Yeah, auto drive. Is auto drive? No auto drive.
Yeah.
Holy fucking Christ, no.
Let's see what do we got. Okay. The largest strike in Amazon is underway. It's seven facilities in the metro areas of San Francisco, Atlanta, Southern California, and New York City. The ultimatum was for union recognition by December 15th or face strike action. And so far, Amazon hasn't budged. And so here's workers on the picket line. Amazon workers are homeless. This comes to us from Status Coup News.
Fortunately for us as the working class, we get disrespected and spit on the face every day, right? This is the working class. I couldn't bring a better example of the working class than this, right? And we are human, and we deserve to get everything that we are asking for now and then some.
What's your name again?
My name is Renzo Ramirez. And also, I want to say, thank you for every single warehouse that is out on strike in other different countries and other different states. We are going to stay together. We are going to win together, and there's nothing stopping us. Bezos will not stop us. Nothing is going to stop us.
So that's the attitude of workers on the ground. So with workers on the picket lines, delivery drivers, they continued to work for the most part. Cops arrested one driver who stopped his van in support of the strike. The police, they also stepped in and locked arms, and they created a safe laneway for a single trickle of delivery vans to exit the facility.
Yay, scabs.
So this affair serves as yet another reminder. This is what the cops do. This is what they're for. And they're not there to protect and serve you. They are there to protect and serve capital, private property, profits. They roll over and shove workers out of the way in the name of capital to keep the profit machine turning and turning.
And if you're on fire on the subway, they will keep walking.
They'll just shrug and say whatever.
Yeah,
I'm
I know.
walking here.
One thing that does come up, and I know if you're in a union, Aaron, but you ever get once in a while you get some union members who are like, "Hey, Chris or Aaron, why do you hate cops so much? Don't you know there are union brothers and sisters too? They're in a union. Why do you hate them?" And it's like, number one, good God help us. Number two, they're not workers. And that Trotsky quote I love. They're not workers. They're bourgeois cops. Their role, as Aaron said, is to crack. They may be our friendly. Once in a while, there'll be a union thing, and they might be there for the Fraternal Brotherhood of Police or whatever, and they might shake our hand and be like, "Hey, how's it going?" If we're on the picket line and they get the order to split our heads open with their batons to make sure the scabs get through, they'll do it in 2 seconds. And if they don't do it, they get fired. They remove them. These people are these are the henchmen. These are like the brown shirts of capital. They're there to beat the crap out of us. That's it. They're not there to arrest murderers or go after people. Well, if you murder a billionaire, some CEO, they're there for them, not for us. That's not their primary purpose. As we saw in these videos and what we saw, they're there to make sure capitalism keeps on capitalism. That's what they're doing. So. Yeah.
Well, most of my workers, the average age is like 22. And,
thank God.
I would say like most of them are on the fuck the police bandwagon.
I have so many liberals in my unit, like a lot of like, come on, like, and they're not like the younger though. They're more like the, like, come on, they're cops too. They're unions, The
only thing I'll say, and I wish, this has been a problematic position with some socialist organizations about cop unions.
Yes.
And something they don't. So like, no, I don't think the RCI explicitly supports cop unions, but they do argue that like there are cases where, cops who come from working class backgrounds will take off their badge and join the other side. And I'm like, I don't think it happens often enough.
I don't.
There's so much studies.
I've
that
heard
goes
that
into,
argument
like,
too from an RCI leading member, and their whole argument was like, well, it's a barrier between like the state and them, and there's like they could like refuse an order. Like the last time I think they went on strike was in Boston in 1919. That's the last time they went on strike. Other than 105 years ago, the police unions routinely, when a cop murders some kid, they get a paid vacation. They get all these benefits. They bankrupt towns. And if you don't negotiate, they'll fuck with people too. Like, ultimately, I don't think cops should have unions because also I don't think they're workers. I think firefighters.
They're not workers. They're not unions.
Like
they're not real unions. They're associations or whatever.
Right. Right.
But what I will say, and I wish they would actually, I think is more a valid point than that, because like when you talk about the potential of uniting labor and cops, you almost come across as being in favor of cop unions, whether you kind of dance around the subject or not. Right. And this is my issue. What you should be doing, and what I think is a better argument, is the benefits and wages that cops get is actually one of the better examples of what you can gain with collective bargaining, because they're paid so well and they get unbelievable pensions.
Right.
And because they have that political power over like city hall and municipalities to give them those benefits.
Right. Because they're afraid of them. Like that's the thing.
That should be an example. That should be the example that we should be following. Is the willingness to fight and the political power that comes with that. That's the only.
Maybe unions should start carrying something that cops carry.
Hey, that might be an idea. Or maybe they should stop supporting Democrats and form their own party. So maybe we won't have to be like fucking Sean O'Brien speak at fucking Trump's thing anymore. Probably
just alienated our 3 RCI listeners. But
I read
he's literally you're wearing one of those shirts right now.
Yeah, the old one. Yeah, I was a former member. Yeah,
just so was saying.
Yeah. Oh shit! I still read your stuff. I think.
We generally try to shy away from like sectarianism on this pod, but I think that's one.
But
that's one weird position that I've always wanted to comment on.
Well, let's just say this: we said let's say 3 nice things. We'll do a 1-to-3 ratio. Okay, so like you have a weird fucking stance on that, but your writings on Venezuela are great. Your writings on the situation in Russia's been great. About you've been saying we should be sending tanks and missiles to NATO and stuff. You've done that. Way to go, RCI. And RCI did something good on I don't know. Fucking whatever. I'm wearing your shirt there. 3 nice things.
Generally they're fine, and I think their emphasis on education of their membership is actually one of their strengths.
Yep. Right.
And you talk to their you talk to their members, engage with them. They're very well read.
Yep.
No pun intended, because that's the name of their publisher. But
Permanent
generally,
Revolution in Latin America, great book. There, we all read it together. There it is. All right, there's my third.
No, I still read their books.
Yeah, the material's still great. Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Okay, so that being said, let's go back to the pod here for a second.
Oh shit! Hey everyone, welcome back.
So additional challenges that the workers are facing, other than cops. December is a time of they bring in an additional 250,000 extra seasonal workers. They're brought in to handle the heavier workloads and could potentially act as scabs, even though they face the same dangerous working conditions as the rest of the warehouse workers. This is also the highest rates of injuries during the Christmas season. So accurate injury numbers are difficult to attain because Amazon uses their own in-house on-site health facilities in order to shift the blame onto workers themselves. OSHA penalties for injuries that do get reported are capped at $16,000 for each serious violation. For a company that makes $70,000 a minute, that's just the cost of doing business.
Oh my God. Yeah.
So, but bringing the company to heel will require significant work stoppages across the global supply chain, which is why the strike must be taken more broadly and on an international scale. The Teamsters have the resources to do it. Now it's just a matter of the will of the leadership and willingness of the workers on the ground to stand up for themselves. And when we fight and stand together, we win. Another problem that they're facing is the drivers. So the drivers actually work for a third-party contractor known as
not all, but a lot do. Yeah.
Known as
I work with somebody who used to be one at the post
delivery
office.
service partner, they're called. So drivers at a DSP in California unionized last year. Amazon ended its contract and cut ties with the contractor,
That's what happened,
resulting in the laying off of 84 drivers. So this is the kind of stuff when like workers talk about unionizing, they're like, oh my God, we're going to lose all of our business. And that's just the power. And that's the difference you're talking about, Chris, of like the difference between fear and cowardice. I think that's a legitimate fear. If you work for a very small business of like less than 100 people, your only client is Amazon and you unionize, guess what? They're going to cut you off.
Right.
Okay. So what do? Not unionize? I still think you should, especially if it's with the Teamsters, because then the Teamsters can at least try and find you other work.
But that did happen with a bunch of us at FedEx. Yeah. Same thing.
Exactly.
Yep. So things can't be done, but you have to organizing it at the like I said, like I said, not all, but you want to organize people who work directly for it too. I just want to bring that point. Yeah, that is a legit thing.
I forget what my point was. So same thing happened in Illinois. So Amazon maintains that it has no obligation to bargain with these workers since they work for third-party contractors. So it's just a really sneaky way to get around it. So drivers themselves are calling bullshit. And I quote, "We drive your branded van. We wear your uniform. Take some accountability."
Yep.
So I think there needs to be some kind of ruling by the NLRB as much as that's worth on paper to be like, yeah, you put on an Amazon vest, you work for Amazon. That's your employer.
Yep. Yeah, I know. So they use like I said, it's that third party crap. FedEx Ground does that too.
In my workplace, if my company subcontracted our field work out to a non-union company, you'd better be there would be hell to pay. We would not allow that to happen.
Good.
And we also prevented that by organizing multiple companies at once.
Smart.
When we started.
Nice.
Yeah, this is how I accidentally stumbled upon union in one workplace or multi workplace unionization.
I can't use that Trotsky
permanent
thing.
Unionization.
Permanent unionization. I was trying to figure out. I'm like, wait, I can't say it either. All right.
Before I ever discovered Marx, that's what I accidentally stumbled upon.
You're an accidental Trotskyist. Oh my God.
Accidental Trotskyist. Exactly.
There you go.
And it's perfectly logical, right? And what's funny is I even see a lot of Marxist Leninists on Twitter also accidentally stumble upon permanent revolution when they're like, well, yeah, of course, the national bourgeoisie in these third world countries are all in cahoots with imperialism. I'm like, yes. If only someone came up with this 100 years ago.
God.
So compared to UPS delivery drivers, Amazon drivers are they're envious of conditions over at UPS. We covered UPS shitty practices, but honestly, there is no comparison. UPS drivers.
I worked at UPS too for 5 years, so I can say envious of their paycheck, but they grind you there at UPS. But we all are. they're the industry leaders amongst everybody.
UPS workers and drivers, they have mechanics on site, while Amazon drivers, they have to cram as many packages like in behind your seat and nooks and crannies all over the vehicle. Like,
Same
no,
here.
just get more in. Just keep driving. Don't stop. Don't stop driving. I always think of there's this photo. You know how Amazon will take a photo of your package on your porch to prove that it was delivered? I saw a photo of a package mid-flight, like as it's being chucked through the air, and they take a picture.
There's been moments. I understand that. You know, it's 110 degrees or it's 6 degrees, and you're tired. You've been up all day. You're filthy. You're like you're working in the crap. You're getting rain. I get it. Yeah. But I wouldn't take a photo of it, but I get it. That's all I'm saying.
Like you are under constant pressure to be productive under Amazon, and Amazon is one of the worst offenders for productivity. So it's like, well, why don't you just go work at UPS then? Right. And
there's a line around the door, dude. That's why.
Again, this is another problem I faced when I was trying to organize my coworkers, right? Job hopping. That's not going to solve underlying systemic issues. Right. And so many workers see the problem with this logic, and it just doesn't fucking fly anymore. What, like 800,000 workers at Amazon are just going to go work for UPS now? That's not an option.
No. And like, I like my job. I want my job to pay. And also you work for the world's one of the world's richest people, for God's sakes.
Yeah. That's
why should I leave? They're the one that sucks. I'm going to quote Office Space.
Yeah. No, I've said that to my, to like the upper management at my company a few times, where I'm like, guys, like I want to work here.
Yeah. Like, I like it here.
I just want to be able to pay my bills while working here.
Crazy.
And they're like, and then they do like 4 renovations. And I'm like, where'd that money come from?
Oh, gee, good. The boss got some more money. We do have a there's a question from the chat here now I'm noticing, and here's a question I want to pose right here. What do you think about Putin's dictatorship in Russia? So obviously there's a group called the American quote unquote Communist Party that has some opinions. And we're not, and let's just say we're a little bit different than that. We don't think Putin is a secret communist. We don't think Putin is restoring the Soviet Union. We think Putin is a bourgeois capitalist reactionary, and that there's voting, but it's not really a vote. You know, opposition seems to be disappearing a lot too. But no, we're not. We think there needs to be a social revolution. Putin needs to go, and the working class needs to take power once again. So that's it. We do not support Putin. We don't support Zelensky. We don't support NATO. We don't support it. We want the soldiers on both sides to turn the guns around and take out the people that sent them there. Yeah, and that's how we're going to do it.
Putin and Zelensky are both guys who were more or less placed in their position by the U.S., which is interesting.
Hey, ironic, is it not? Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And it's weird how, you know, it's always comes to be that 25 years later or whatever, we're like, well, we put this new guy in charge in the country next to you, and he's going to take you out because you're evil now. Like, It's funny how that just always works.
Amazing.
Yeah, well, we got to keep those weapons flowing.
Hey, the military-industrial complex doesn't run on hopes and dreams, all right, buddy? It needs dollars so we can bomb fucking more people. But all right, Aaron, you have a clip right here, I see. All right.
Yeah, this is our another worker. This comes to us from
the WSWS watermark. Yikes.
They also had, to their credit, they had people on the ground too, talking to Teamster workers.
I'm a driver. We're supposed to have a guarantee of our 40 hours if we're doing well and we don't have any bunch of complaints. But that doesn't happen. If I get my packages done within 7 hours of the day, or if I'm working great and I get it done in 5, I get my hours. That's it. I don't get guaranteed 40. I have to work extra days to make my 40. That means I'm doing well. Then the extra time is not time and a half. It's if I make 44 hours, I get paid 44 hours. I don't get time and a half. I don't get holiday pay. I'm told calling out before, during, or after the day after a holiday is considered.
Oh my God!
So there's a plenty of reasons. All the drivers are hired by companies. So Amazon says we're not their workers, but at the same time,
he's independent contractor. Oh, those poor bastards.
Everybody has like plausible deniability, basically.
Yep.
Not being an direct employee of Amazon makes it okay to say, well, like I said, everybody gets plausible deniability. BSP could say, no, that's Amazon that doesn't want to pay you time and a half, and then they can say no to It's your company that doesn't want to pay you time and a half. So it's like by design, because if they keep us all like, oh, you work for that company, you deal with that company. If we all don't work for Amazon, then everybody can say it's not my fault, it's not my fault, it's not my fault.
Yep.
Any reason could happen to say that we're not fantastic, and then you don't get our guarantee. Anything could happen. It could say, I can get a package delivered to you, you meet me at the door, you say, well, thank you, great delivery. But then the app can tell me that I scanned it way too far from your house, and then I lose my score goes down.
Yep, they're not.
So it's a lot of things that we out here for.
That's wild.
Wow.
I didn't know any of that.
Okay.
That's fucking crazy.
I don't know how to make this sound like, for me, who's in the industry, that is so amazing. Some of that crap. If I call out after or before a day, it's not a resignation. Nothing will happen to me because I get a sick day. If I have a pattern of it, management's allowed to request a doctor's note. There's a pattern. Then I get to have, and if it's a bad thing, I get to be pulled in with management, with my steward. I get to explain myself. And then I have a procedure, a discipline procedure. I have all these built-in safeguards because of my union. Because everyone's like, well, what's the union do for you? That's what a union does. It protects you. This guy, poor bastard, has none of that protection, and they think it's a resignation. And after you work 44 hours, and 4 hours is straight time. Under federal labor law, either union or non-union, you are entitled to overtime, time and a half. But because he's an independent contractor, that's how corporations like fucking Amazon get around it. This is what's happening to the working class in this country. And that's legal. That is legal. That is your Democrats and Republicans writing labor laws in such a way that this guy and thousands of people like him, like all you Uber, Lyft drivers, all you gig drivers, they want to make it so you have no rights. So billionaires can profit off of him. God damn, I understand Luigi now. Fuck.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Anyway. I mean like the video game Luigi. You know what I mean. All right. What do we got? Is this going to piss me off too, Aaron? All right. I'm ready.
No, I think this will, I think we'll offer a little bit of hope here.
Okay. Because I just boiled my rice. All right.
we're all about raising the consciousness of the working class on this podcast.
Okay.
Amazon's raking in $17 billion in profit in the last 3 months. I mean, do we think that's fair? We don't think that's fair, and we're here to say that enough is enough.
Mr. Goldberg, I do want to read you a little bit of a statement that Amazon did publish out this morning, basically saying that it's the Teamsters Union that is not bargaining in good faith, essentially claiming that they don't represent the number of people that they say, that they are attempting to push a false narrative, and that they have been trying to actively threaten, intimidate, and attempt to coerce Amazon employees. What is your response to that?
I mean, of course they would say something like that. We know that Amazon is one of the most anti-union companies in the country. They're afraid of us. They're afraid of us. They know that, when we get together, we have the power to change things in our workplace. We have the power to win more, and that's not good for the company. So it makes sense to me why they would say something like that. They're simply afraid.
How long does this strike go for?
Well, look, the length of the strike is in Amazon's hands. If Amazon comes to the bargaining table, starts negotiating with us, then, we'll end the strike. But until then, we're going to be out here.
Fuck yeah, that guy.
Nice, yeah.
All right, Mr. Goldberg. All right, brother Goldberg. Here we go. Good.
Okay.
Yeah. It's up to I like that. It's up to Amazon how long this wants to go for. Perfect.
So something interesting I noticed on the picket lines, I noticed some people wearing Starbucks shirts.
Oh,
so
that's good.
There are Starbucks baristas that are joining the Amazon picket lines as well, but not in any sort of like mass mobilization capacity. I think it's just in the ones and twos. Something I've called for on Twitter. I don't know if I don't know if anyone listened, but I think it would be awesome if the Starbucks baristas showed up with coffee to like the Amazon picket lines and they united these strikes. So at the same time that Amazon went on strike, 5,000 baristas across 300 stores walked off the job earlier this week to get the Starbucks management to come to the table and recognize the union and bargain in good faith. It's the largest Starbucks walkout to date, similar to the Teamster strike. We saw Starbucks workers on the picket lines with the Amazon workers. The problems are the usual issues workers have with the bosses. If you're listening, chances are you already support the Starbucks workers. Their challenges are the closing of stores whenever they unionize, the cutting off the head only for 2 more stores to take its place. Amazon warehouses are centralized locations with thousands of workers, while Starbucks stores have maybe 20 employees across thousands of locations. So a mass organization of a decentralized shop, that's a daunting task. And frankly, I don't know of any effort that has come close to this kind of success with this style of like a shop, like a workshop, but still in the last couple of years, 500 stores representing 11,000 workers in at least 40 US states are under a union. So it's very impressive, and we offer our full solidarity with the striking and organizing workers. Starbucks as a corporation supports Zionism and imperialism. It exploits third world for cheap imports of coffee and other products to underpay their staff and ignore their union. Boycotting them until they recognize the union is what is being asked of us as consumers, and boycotting them for the support of Israel is another valid option too. We see baristas on the streets wearing kefias, knowing damn well what their employer is up to. And here's the difference between 2024 and say like 1999 in terms of like striking back at Starbucks, right? I remember we watched that Battle for Seattle documentary not too long ago.
Damn.
So if you want to deal a financial blow to the corporation, instead of smashing their windows, you organize their workers, raise their consciousness, and pave the way for democratic workers' control.
Bingo.
A mass strike action disconnecting Starbucks ties to Israel will do far more damage to imperialism than boycotts and window smashing ever will.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, the workers learn to organize, they learn their self-worth as workers, and many do come to revolutionary conclusions. But some don't see it that way. The ACP, led by Haz Al-Din, Jackson Hinkle, and the Midwestern Marx clowns, they seem to think baristas aren't actually workers. They boil coffee and serve it.
No shit. Oh, that's not work, I guess. Okay.
A far cry from the labor that went into growing and shipping those beans. So why should we give a shit about them? Why not replace their jobs with robots? What value do they add as workers? Are they petty bourgeois parasites or proletarian heroes? For more on this, we turn to Ben, who is here to kind of help us clear up some of these problems.
The dumbest discourse of all fucking time.
It really is.
That's the title of the episode.
Well, to start, I think there might be a sneaking suspicion that Haas doesn't know what he's talking about. I know that's a bold statement.
Stop the presses!
Are you accusing Chairman Haas?
The chairman of a party that's existed for 38 minutes. How dare you?
I mean, so Starbucks baristas aren't workers, and homeless people are landlords, and this is what a class analysis looks like for Patsy. Yeah, I wanted to talk about a little bit about that, and the thing about it too is it comes down to a lot of this like confusion around that comes down to like a fetishization of what like a specific worker needs to look like and be like, and if it doesn't look like something off of like a 1930s Soviet poster, then it's not a worker. They're not workers. It's very it's just narrow-minded and not also that it's just like not that hard to kind of demonstrate that that's not true. It's definitely not how Marx thought of it. There's a question that gets tied up in this about productive and unproductive labor, and Marx actually wasn't the first. Marx wrote about this in a few spots, and if you want to read more, we can have these go into like the show notes. But like the appendix of Volume 1 of Capital and Chapter 6 of Volume 2, those are the two big places where he really digs into this question. But in Volume 1, he kind of starts by saying that like, okay, any labor that produces a use value is productive labor. That's actually that's actually from Adam Smith. So he takes that from Adam Smith. Where Marx comes in and adds the novelty is that that's like a general commodity production type of thing. But in capitalism, production is not the same thing anymore as like a primitive like economy of or like a peasant-based local economy or something like that. It's basically the entire purpose of the production process becomes creating surplus value for the capitalist. And so Marx says that in a capitalist system, productive labor is labor that produces surplus value, and unproductive labor is labor that does not produce surplus value. To be honest, it's an important distinction if you're trying to like really analyze, like capitalism, but it's not in terms of like tactics and in terms of like who should be unionizing. I just want to be really clear that like it's not actually like a useful thing. Like unproductive workers can and should be unionized wherever they can be in the same way as productive workers can and should be. And yeah, I guess like if we look at Starbucks though, like we can really see like the fact he's highlighting this thing is Starbucks workers, that it's like it doesn't really make any sense because their job, they are producing a commodity. They're producing a useful commodity. They're producing surplus value through that labor. It's very straightforward, like, like the coffee beans, the machines are all constant capital. The workers are the variable capital, and the workers are producing surplus value. It's very straightforward. And the only reason, again, it's just like this fetishism that if you don't look a certain way, then you're not a real worker, which is crap. Yeah, I would say too, the part of the confusion too is the fact that we use the term service labor like very broadly. I actually don't really think there's very much difference at all between, a worker in a factory and a worker at Starbucks. It's really the same general thing. They're both producing commodities.
They're both selling the labor.
They're both selling their labor.
Like I said, either you write the paycheck or you cash the paycheck. Like you're the check cashing. You're a worker. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Like this seems.
It's that fucking simple.
Yeah. You work for a capitalist.
And I get a paycheck, and he gets profit. Mr. Azaldine, chairman of the American whatever fucking party you just came up with name. Right? Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, there is like a distinction between in productive and unproductive labor, but it's really not that important in the grand scheme of things.
You good?
Yeah, and that's the kind of first thing. And the other thing too is there's also a confusion around services in terms of if you don't produce an object that you can carry around, that's not production. And it's based on the fact that Marx did, living in the 1800s, did use factory laborers as his main people to look at, right? The shirts, the linen, all that stuff. But he actually is he's very explicit actually about the fact that that's not what he's trying to say.
Right.
So there's a really interesting quote I found. The other thing too with Marx is that the same labor, it's not really the labor itself, like the qualities of the labor, that makes it productive and unproductive. It's just whether it produces surplus value or if it's kind of a drain on the surplus value. Like accountants tend to be those are considered to be unproductive labor. Like if your company has an accountant. That being said, though, if there's a company that hires a ton of accountants and that becomes their business model, right? Then those accountants are being exploited by that capital. So it's not necessarily the fact it's all accountants are unproductive. All of this is unproductive.
I mean, I'm a delivery driver. I don't produce a commodity. That comes up. Someone's like, well, you don't produce anything.
Yeah.
Right. And Marx, it's a production of production. You need something. I don't build anything, but I get the product from A to B. You need that, even though I'm not actually making anything. I'm just moving something.
Well, and Marx is actually explicit in volume 2 that the transportation of a commodity from its production point to the place where it's going to be sold is part of the production process and is actually productive labor.
Thank you for backing me up, Ben. I didn't know where I was going to go with that.
Yeah,
appreciate that.
I found this really good quote.
Volume 2, Marx.
I found this really good quote I wanted to read that I think really will help illustrate some of this. So he says that labor with the same content can therefore be both productive and unproductive. Milton, for example, who wrote Paradise Lost, was an unproductive worker. In contrast to this, the writer who delivers hack work for his publisher is a productive worker. Milton produced Paradise Lost in the way that a silkworm produces silk, as the expression of his own nature. Later on, he sold the product for £5 and to that extent became a dealer in a commodity. But the Leipzig literary proletarian who produces books, e.g. compendia on political economy, at the instructions of his publisher, is roughly speaking a productive worker, insofar as his production is subsumed under capital and only takes place for the purpose of the latter's valorization. Valorization is the process where that initial capital has value added to it by the productive worker. A singer who sings like a bird is an unproductive worker. If she sells her singing for money, she is to that extent a wage laborer or commodity dealer. But the same singer, when engaged by an entrepreneur who has her sing in order to make money, is an unproductive worker, for she directly produces capital. A schoolmaster who educates others is not a productive worker, but a schoolmaster who is engaged as a wage laborer in an institution along with others in order through his labor to valorize the money of the entrepreneur, of the knowledge mongering institution, is a productive worker. Yet most of these kinds of work from the formal point of view are hardly subsumed formally under capital. They belong rather to among the transitional forms. And that's the other thing too, is that Marx's perspective on this is not static, because in his time, old traditional industries were converting and becoming capitalist industries. So like retail is like an example where, for Marx, that would be considered unproductive labor. But now that we have these, think about it, in the 1800s, it was like a lot of small shopkeepers. That was the retail sector. Now we have like massive corporations that are hiring, millions of workers, and to be performing those tasks at work. It's so frustratingly stupid when someone is basically picks at like, oh, well, you're not a real worker, because it's so fundamentally opposed to what we're trying to accomplish as communists. It cannot be stressed enough how like stupid that is. And I had one last example too, about the commodity being a physical thing. Well, first off, perhaps the most important commodity in Marx's analysis is labor power, which is not a physical, tangible thing. And yet it's a commodity that's on sale. I like to use an example of a barber shop as well, of a service job, right? Where the barber, all the barbers work for like a barber capitalist, right? That owns the salon. And that you go in and you pay your money and they cut your hair and they do everything. The only thing that really is different from that, from like, more of like a traditional manufacturing type of work, is that there's not commodity capital per se. It's like, as the commodity is being produced, it's being consumed by the customer. It's all happening in real time. It's not something where they buy. You don't go to the barbershop like, yeah, I want a haircut, and they give you like a bag and you go,
here you go, here's your hair.
Yeah. And it's all kind of magic, right? Yeah, so those are just kind of what I wanted to say about it. It's an issue where the productive labor thing is not that complicated, but it gets grafted. All this other shit gets grafted onto it, and it's like, oh well, if you don't produce physical commodities, then you're not a real worker. You're not a productive worker. If you if you're not making steel, then you're an unproductive worker. I mean, it doesn't even make any sense. We need to reunite the entire working class. That's all I have for that.
All right.
Adriana on Twitter says, Marx in chapter 7 of Capital, every aspect of labor that goes into commodity production is productive labor. It produces surplus value, which is profit, which is accrued by the capitalist. Under imperialism, the division of labor is global. The coffee beans harvested in the third world, raw materials, and the coffee prepared by the barista, finished product, are two integral and essential parts of the production of commodities. Are both productive labor, and the barista in America or Canada and by the worker harvesting beans in Latin America are tied together by invisible threads via labor. And these threads are made apparent through international proletarian revolution. And here is an excerpt that I wanted to read.
That sounds like some petty bourgeois bullshit, Aaron. Who wrote this shit, huh? Come on, who's this guy?
A homeless landlord of the street.
That's it.
I want to read an excerpt here. The labor contained in the raw material and the instruments of labor can be treated just as if it were labor expended in an earlier stage of the spinning process, before the labor of actual spinning commenced.
Yeah, and that's a thing that you see in every industry, where you have one workplace will create a product, and then that product will then become an input for another industry. Like this is like almost every.
You make screws for you make nails. The nails get made in construction for houses. That
exactly.
There you go.
It's the interconnectedness of us all, right? Like and it's like, social labor too. Yeah,
but they would argue that like this is a service industry, whereas like warehouse workers, because this is also in response to their statement.
Yeah, that's ironic
Amazon
from them. Boy,
they support the Amazon strike, but these are just warehouse workers. They're moving a box from a shelf into a bin, and then the bin
just
goes
like
into
me.
a van.
We don't produce. We're all petty bourgeois.
They don't produce anything. So what's the fundamental difference between a person handing you coffee and a person, I don't know, putting a box in a putting a box in a larger box and putting it in a van?
It's fucking vibes. It's
vibes.
100%. That's all it is, because
Amazon workers are Teamsters are tough. That's it. That's all it is. It's image.
It all boils down to their fucking coded and latent homophobia and transphobia, because they think Starbucks workers
Right.
They see Starbucks workers as like they're all transgender, study, blue hair.
Who's the customers?
They have
Oh, the
freaks
customers are
with-
like soft
with-
people who, yeah.
They're all
Right.
freaks with like, you know, gender studies degrees, and they all went to arts and crafts school, and now they all want to be paid a living wage. Yeah, you know
Right.
what?
Yeah.
Why not? Why
And I
can't
can tell
why
you
not they
this
fucking deserve a
too.
living wage?
During the pandemic, I saw Dunkin' Donuts, Starbucks, all the fast food fucking work. They were working with us too. They didn't like. They have no union. The boss didn't get back out there and work. They were performing a service that people wanted to. Food preparation. They were out there with us, along with the firefighters too, and all the other shit too. So yeah, please.
Well, it reminds me of how like Americans can only understand revolution when it's George Washington, when it's like a painting of George Washington crossing the fucking Delaware with a tri-cornered hat and whatever bullshit they wore. Because like if it's any other time period or like any other situation, it's like well, no, you're just complaining, like you're ungrateful, you're whatever.
Well,
and it's like
these guys have transitioned away from this now. The discourse online, and as at the moment of recording, the new discourse that started by these idiots is you know, the romanticization of the American Revolution, and whether or not Lenin supported it, and whether or not it was progressive, and this
They've
so
never
much
read
nonsense
Marx or
behind it.
Lenin.
These guys are just throwing shit at the wall, and whatever sticks, that's what they believe for the day.
Because they believe that they can make Marxism and communism sexy to the most reactionary, backward elements of the American working class, which I'm sorry to say,
and
seems to be most of
surprisingly,
it.
they just end up chasing whatever they think that crowd is
Wants
doing.
to hear,
wants to hear. Yeah.
Right. Opportunism, maybe? Is this what it's called?
Taylism?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's
Taylism.
it's all
Taylism,
nonsense.
actually.
And I'm wondering if it's some kind of also misinterpretation of like the mass line, because you know these guys do claim to read Mao as well.
Right. They claim a lot of things, you know.
One
They're
last
not
thing.
even Stalinists, you know, and I'm not a fan of Stalinism, but I know Stalinists who are better than them, for God's sakes.
Yes, and it is mostly Stalinists that do argue with these clowns.
I know.
They just block Trotskyists on site.
Oh, thank God.
which is fine by me.
You know what? They did them a favor. I know. You can't shoot us again, huh?
I'm blocked by Haas, but
it's like holding out a cross, but it's an ice pick.
Great.
Like,
good. We get it.
The ACP demons.
This is a dude. This dude has 100,000 followers.
There's a lot of bots
on Twitter,
sure.
and somehow I got to him so badly that he went out of his way to block me.
Well done.
So
Nice.
I'm pretty proud of that. One last thing I'll say is automation. And again, another reason these guys don't respect Starbucks workers, they want it to be, because like with AI, because Starbucks workers, they all have arts and crafts degrees. Right.
I love those arts.
So they love AI because it replaces the need to pay artists. And they also want that automation to replace coffee makers.
These are Marxists, right? You said good, not like capitalists. Okay, good.
I shit you not.
Vivek Ramaswamy.
I shit you not. They're people. I'm not going to say the leadership of ACP, but their own people online were arguing that automation, if we just replace Starbucks workers with robots, it'll just free up more time and give more time to Starbucks workers and baristas.
In a capitalist system, huh? In a
Yeah.
capitalist system, the robots are there to help. My God, they haven't read anything.
I'll pay my rent with free time. Thank you.
In a socialist system, yes, automation and things like that would reduce the necessary hours,
100%.
and you would have no loss of pay, but more. In a socialist system, this is capitalism. Look, ask all the people at Carrier. They automated half that stuff, and they fired a bunch of people, and that's it. There's no job benefits for them. You idiots! Like, God damn, automation under socialism, yes. Automation under capitalism is death for you.
Yeah.
Like it goes, man.
Well, it's like when Biden pardoned that like Kids for Cash judge that
Jesus
fucking
God. For no reason.
Yeah, well, people were like, well, it falls under this like nonviolent offender thing that they're letting people out or whatever. And it's like, I'd argue that's not really a nonviolent.
Kids took
whatever.
lives. Kids committed suicide because of these kids were soft and they went to bad places. I grew up with some rough kids.
Yeah.
A lot of those kids who went to those places, a lot of them deserved it. I'm going to be honest. These kids, not good. But these kids were too soft. These kids did like a joke web page and they got locked up with the worst of the worst kid. It's not, trust me, but there's some kids.
It was a human trafficking project. And it's insane But then people were coming out like, wow, the left says they're in favor of prison abolition until you actually, and it's like, you think prison abolition means just letting out monsters?
Right,
Like just
yeah, no.
taking people who are completely not like rehabilitated, and
Right.
like prison abolition means when you do have people in the justice system, they're not in a fucking metal concrete cell. They're
Right.
in like a humane place, and it means real rehabilitation before
Right.
you let somebody
Like,
out.
look at Sweden.
It
Like, if you
doesn't-
see anything from Sweden, it's like, yeah, like there's an
Yeah.
island and they have like skills. They can learn things. They live in, it's like a dormitory, you know,
Right.
like,
Right.
yeah.
It's like
I once put it
people
as
have these stupid ideas because they have capitalist realism disease. And
Yeah.
they're like, well, that's what you wanted, right? To just open the fucking cell and let everyone out. Like, no one said that. But you
Like,
don't
I'm not an
fucking
anarchist.
listen.
I do believe that some people should stay in jail. Like, you can't rehabilitate them. They are a danger to themselves or society. But like, most people are there for like drug possession and shit, you know, that's fucking let them out.
Here's the thing. When people ask me, like, what do I think of prison abolition? I respond with, what would society look like if, in order to make prisons obsolete, right?
Yes,
and then you get into all sorts of questions. I'm like, okay, well, what causes crime in the first place? And then, like, 99% of the time it's poverty. So
Right.
what do you do? Like, all roads lead to a socialist revolution.
Right. Right. If there was an
And-
opportunity
and
where you
and
could
that-
make
that is the
$50
only
an hour
realistic
doing an
way.
honest job, yeah, fuck, you know, people
That's
are
the only
gonna do
realistic
shit.
way, because people turn to like gang violence and stuff because there's no hope in a lot of these inner city communities, because the only community they have is the brotherhood and the gangs,
Right.
and then again, all of our money goes towards the police to jail these people and enslave them to make cheap food for Whole Foods
And be firefighters in California
fight our
for Kamala
wildfires.
Harris.
Just gonna say it, damn it. Fight our wildfires in California. Like that's what we're talking about when we talk about prison abolition, is the transformation of society in which we didn't need to jail people.
Right. You know, like I said, give more opportunity, give people what
that
they
being
need:
said,
food,
like,
clothing, shelter, hope, an opportunity to do something meaningful, be a part of a community. I'm sure you'd see it all dry up. I mean, like I said, there's some people who are just, there's something wrong. And
They're libertarians.
Right. Right. Yeah, I know. And obviously, after a counter revolution, a bunch of Nazis, you're going to be in jail. I'm sorry, Nazi. Like, if you're like burning churches and synagogues and shit and you're going to jail. Not executed, but you're going to jail. That's it. That's all it's going to be. Like I said, we do need jail for some of you people. I'm just saying. Because you're going to kill us first. I get it. We understand the Salvador Allende, whatever, Pinochets and the fascists. There's going to be some jail for you. A nice jail, though. A really good one. Far away in the woods.
So that's all the material I had planned. Is there anything else you guys want to cover or talk about?
I think we're good. I think we had a good one. I think I'm good. All the rest of y'all good?
Pretty solid episode.
All right. Okay. And we got an idea. Was Stalin a bad person? That could be. I'm not kidding. Thank you. 6-6 on it. That's not bad.
He ate all the grain.
He did. Dirty bastard.
That's what caused the Holodomor.
Gave it all to Hitler, which sort of, all right. All right.
Yeah, what if we give all our oil to Hitler? Maybe that'll be a good decision, aka as Stalin said in 1939.
Yeah, that's good. Fascism is just a phase. That's all he felt like. That was the commentary. It's just a phase. That's all. Like ska. It's all going to be over. It's going to be over in 3 years. Remember, swing was a thing. That was weird.
Oh God.
Let me plug our socials too. So if you want to keep in touch with the show, please follow us on Facebook, Left Opposition Podcast, Patreon if you want to donate $5 or more, or $1, I guess, whatever you want. $100, $3,000, $1 million a month, whatever. The Left Opposition Podcast on Patreon, Blue Sky.
Socialists asking for money on.
We definitely, yes. Unfortunately, comrades, we have not won the revolution because we have to pay for like Zoom and stuff. Unfortunately, the capitalists are getting us down. But if you want to help us, because it takes work to do this, and Aaron's editing, my God, Aaron should get $1 million an episode for the free editing he does for making this so possible. But it's a labor of love. We have fun doing it. So Patreon, Facebook, Blue Sky, Threads, MySpace, LiveJournal, Telegraph, Western Union, however you can get to us, the Left Opposition Podcast. All right, there you go. Yeah. Friendster, if you can. That's it. Atari 2600, whatever it takes. But all right, Aaron, play us out, man. Here we go.
Thank you, everybody.